The true sound of healing is love. We can use the conversational voice as a healing instrument as long as we project kindness, love, compassion onto it. The universe is a symphony. Everything is vibration. We are all unique vibratory beings. Silence is the yin to the yang of sound. It is the place where the assimilation actually occurs. Humming is the embodiment of all those things. It's actually the most powerful vibroacoustic sound that we can make. The hum is the one sound you can't be judgmental about. I can't hum good. Everybody can hum. You hum when you're happy. You can also learn very easily how to use sound with intentionality as portals or dimensional consciousness shifts. Vocalization plus visualization equals manifestation. I'm going to lead you into what we call the protocols of conscious humming.
Great.
That was wonderful.
Welcome, everybody, to the Heart Coherence Collaborative. We're so excited. We have our new friend, Jonathan Goldman, back with us here today. And Jonathan, for those of you who don't know, he is the sound guru. His resume is probably the most impressive resume I've ever read. But he also is down to earth, and he specializes in so many other things. So we're really excited to take this conversation wherever it goes today.
Yes. And he's also a very flexible person, we've learned, because we've had a bunch of technical difficulties. So we always appreciate a flexible spirit. I think that's one of the greatest signs about somebody as we've done these interviews with people.
Yeah. So,
well, it's a blessing to be talking to you two. Thank you for inviting me, and I'm glad we're somehow able to manifest this. I think it's going to be a good one considering the challenges that have occurred.
That's life. It's like, it's harder, then sometimes it's better when you get it.
yeah, so I would love to hear, say there's somebody listening, they're having a crazy day, their Zoom's not working, this is going on, that's going, what if they had 5 minutes, what sound practices would you recommend they do?
So the big, that's a huge question, but actually it's a pretty easy one because I have been in this field for close to 50 years, and I have worked with so many different sounds, whether it's working with bowls or whatnot. The reason I didn't hit that is because I have to literally, actually, I'm going to go change to being flexible. I just changed to original sound from musicians, which now allows me to hit a bowl without it clipping off or even louder. Which is, we have bowls, we have tuning forks, we have mantras, we have Tibetan overtone chanting, we have all this other stuff. But the thing which I've been working with particularly for the last probably close to 10 years in terms of sharing it with people is the hum. The humble hum, which seems to be the sound that is the source of all other sounds, and is a sound that people can learn to use almost immediately. And it is a sound that, among other things, is fabulous for reducing heart rate, respiration, brainwave activity, and really focusing. And if you like, maybe a little later, I'll talk more about it. We call it conscious humming. And do I have a copy of our book around? Hold on for a second. Here he goes. He disappears to get this, which is the humming effect. And it's an award-winning book. And also, I've got lots of different books, including, this is the 30th anniversary. It was released last year of the Healing Sounds, which is a wonderful book. But the humming effect really has, if you like, focused, been able to get people into a real deep level of understanding sound, even if they've not done it at all, because it is a sound that babies make naturally, the elderly make. We hum when we're happy, all these different things. So I would introduce them to the conscious hum, and in fact, I do that oftentimes with people, and we'll share that with you, because people are so stressed out these days. And humming, have you played with humming at all? Because I don't know.
I'd love to play more, but
Yeah.
I've played a little bit.
Great,
A
great.
rookie hummer.
Moderate hummer. I definitely am a happy hummer, and then try to do it in terms of like vagus nerve
Yeah.
stimulation and all of that.
Right. Yes, I love that. People have gotten into the vagus nerve, and now they've gotten into nitric oxide, which is generated when you
Oh,
hum and stuff like that.
didn't know that. Can
Oh,
you say
this
more
art.
about that?
Okay, so here we're diving deep into the hum
Yeah.
already. I usually save that to after I go through the four pillars of sound healing, but we'll
Ooh.
go into the hum. But I'd like to say that there are two ways that sound affects us. One is called psychoacoustics, and that's where sound goes into our ear, into our brain, affecting our nervous system, our heart rate, our respiration, our brain waves. The second one is called vibroacoustics, and that's where sound goes into our body. Here is an example of, I don't know if this will work, so I'll demonstrate these two. Here's psychoacoustics, right? Okay, you listen to it. Here is vibroacoustics, the sound going into my body. And this is, a lot of people are focused on psychoacoustics these days in terms of sound. And, when you listen to music, or even when you speak, oftentimes a psychoacoustic phenomena for somebody else. And what I always like to say is that we can use the conversational voice as a healing instrument as long as we project kindness, love, compassion onto it. So we can be talking to each other, and you can be in a frumpy state of consciousness, and I go, hey, how you doing? Hey, Kyle, you look good. Oh, Leah, what a marvelous smile you have. And all of a sudden, the person can be perked up. So this is just something we often share. We have actually, okay, I'm jumping around, but we have four pillars of sound healing. And I'm going to share those with you first before we go into the hum, just because it's, the first one is that everything is vibration. Our ancient mystic masters and our quantum physicists are in agreement that not only is the universe is a symphony, but everything is vibration. And the basic principle of using sound as a healing modality is simply that if everything is in vibration, every organ, every bone, every tissue, every part of our body is in a state of vibration. And when we're healthy, we say we're in sound health, when we're like this overall orchestra that is playing the symphony of the self. But what happens if the second violin player loses their sheet music? They play out of tune, out of harmony. Pretty soon, the entire string section is off, and pretty soon the entire orchestra is off. And this is akin to a part of our body vibrating out of its correct, natural, healthy, resonant frequency. And the basic principle of using sound as a healing modality is simply to restore the sheet music back to the string player, or somehow just create balance back where it was. And this is actually the principle of most, if you like, holistic therapies, whether it's, believe it or not, chiropractic, acupuncture, chromotherapy, which is light therapy, or any of the vibrational therapies, is just basically putting us into a state of balance. So that's very, very important. As you can see, I have a lot of different sonic toys, but we think that the most powerful sonic tool is the human voice. Doesn't require electricity, doesn't need batteries, and the owner's manual is relatively easy to use, and it's free, and everybody's got one. So that's the first one, is that basically everything is vibration, first secret, or pillar, if you like, pillar of sound healing. Second one is intent is powerful. And back in the 1980s, I was getting a master's degree at Lesley University researching the uses of sound music for healing. And I had a pile of papers about yo-hi. And there are all sorts of different systems of using sound for healing. for working with the chakras, which I was very interested in, for working with the different organs. And I remember sitting in front of a computer that used what is called a DOS operating system. It was really actually a dark screen with amber letters, and they were waiting for me to input all this information. And I began to do this, and I realized I thought that this was going to be the encyclopedia of sound healing. Nobody had done this before, and I was going to come up with the different frequencies for everything. But instead, I'd have Dr. X who would be using a certain amount of frequencies, a certain frequency or sound for one organ, Dr. Y using a completely different set of frequencies for the same organ. Spiritual Master A working with a mantra for a particular chakra, and Spiritual Master B using a different mantra for the same chakra. And I'm sitting there in a state of angst going, how can this be? How can this be? This doesn't make any sense. And all of a sudden I hear this inner voice that said, it is not only the frequency of the sound that creates its effect, but the intention of the person making and receiving the sound. I went, wow. And I wrote down the words frequency plus intent. These amber letters on a dark screen there. It was almost like gold against black, glowing. Frequency plus intent equals healing. And at the time, I tried to talk to different scientists and doctors about this stuff, and they thought I was perhaps someone from another planet, which I may be, but they weren't supposed to know it. But then you have people like Bruce Lipton and Joe Dispenza and all these other folks working with the power of intention, the power of placebo and all this other stuff, and it's now been accepted. I could mention intention to you, went, wow, yeah, great. At the time, yikes, it was too weird, but now there's so much stuff. So intention is very important, which is why when I said we can do healing with a conversational voice, it all depends upon the intention. Our words can be incredibly healing, and at the same time, most people are in such a state of fear and anger oftentimes that the words coming out of their mouths are not necessarily ones that are positive. And I really just stress to everyone to try to be kind in your communication. All right, the second one, so everything is vibration. Intent is powerful too. 3, we are all unique vibratory beings. Are either of you allergic to penicillin?
They used to say I was allergic to amoxicillin, but they kind of took that away.
Okay, cool. Usually, I ask this as a metaphor for people, and usually about 20% of an audience will be allergic to penicillin. I say, cool. So if everything in the universe is a frequency, if everything is a vibration, the penicillin is a vibration or a series of vibrations. And for 80% of an audience, it's going to be healing, but for 20%, it's going to be toxic. And I think that's a great metaphor for everything, whether it's food, pharmaceuticals, music, you name it. I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all phenomena that works for everybody. And this is so important because then it empowers ourselves to realize that there's no magic frequency, and that if something doesn't resonate with us, great, honor it. I have seen people say, well, this is a healing frequency for you, and people get sick from that. And they go, what's wrong with me? Well, maybe it just didn't work for them. So having this understanding that there is no magic frequency, that we need, that everyone is unique, and therefore sound or pharmaceuticals or supplements or whatever are, based upon so many different things. It's important to know. And finally, the last secret, if you like, the last pillar is silence is golden. I probably was in the field teaching for practically 20 years before I realized that one. It was huge because when you first start working with sound, it's so powerful. You become so enamored. Oh, making sound is the greatest thing in the world. Silence is the yin to the yang of sound. It is the place where the assimilation actually occurs. And if you're just going from one thing to another sound, you don't really give the sound the ability to basically assimilate and shift and change as much as it could. On a level, silent, the word silent, and the word listen are anagrams. So if you are silent, you can listen within. And so whenever we do any sort of sonic exercise or whatnot, being in the state of silence after is really mandatory. So everything is vibration, intent is powerful, we're all unique vibratory beings, and silence is golden. Those 4 pillars, I think, are so important for people to understand, whether they're listening to music, whether they're working with sound or whatnot. How did that resonate with you kids?
Great.
That all felt very true.
Yeah.
Our mission here at the Heart Coherence Collaborative is to get people in touch with the healing power of the heart.
And we really need your help. Right now, only 1% of viewers subscribe. We are aiming to take that number to 6%.
The reason why we want to do that is the more people that subscribe, the more people in the world can learn the magical practice of heart coherence.
So please help us out. If you've ever listened, if you love this message, please just take a moment to subscribe.
Thank you so much. We love you.
We love you.
To you, babe.
Well, so I know we were going to talk about humming, and you wanted to go through the pillars of sound.
Yes, we are.
Talked about that, so I would love to.
Well,
I'm
humming
so
is-
excited about nitrous oxide.
Okay, so humming is the embodiment of all those things. Number 1, it's a vibration. Number 2, it's actually the most powerful vibroacoustic sound that we can make, meaning it creates the greatest vibration in our body. Now, how or why is that? Because the sound, all right, we're going to play a game for just a moment, if I may with you. I want you to hum, but have your lips closed. And you're going to hum, all right, you're going to hum on one note that is comfortable to you, usually very close to the conversational voice. So it's not going to be, or it's, whatever, you know, and you're going to, on one note, you're not going to do the 1812 Overture or whatever, or the Flight of the Bumblebee or one of your favorite tunes. That's great, but this is just, once again, and I want you to do that, and as you start doing it, pinch your nose. Okay. I hope that I can't hear you now. That's one of the things about Zoom is that it'll take the hum and it'll suppress the hum unless you have original sound from musicians. But were you able to actually make the humming sound when you pinched your nose?
I was
hope
not.
you weren't.
I was
I
not.
was, unfortunately.
You were or weren't?
I was, yeah. Maybe
Then
I
you
just
didn't have
did
your
it
lips
wrong.
closed.
Okay, I was
It's
cheating.
impossible to hum if your lips are closed. Try it again and really close your lips.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Yeah, yeah. All right.
I have people go, "Oh, I can hum with my lips open." It's not a hum then. I see. So the sound is when your lips are open. Sound is coming out. It's great, but here it's all self-contained and it resonates really in your sinus cavity and in your cranium and your skull. So a couple of things about things that happen when you hum. When you do conscious humming, my wife and I call it conscious humming because it's different than humming zippity-doo-dah. Okay, you get increased oxygen in your cells, you get lowered blood pressure and heart rate. Well, that's huge, incidentally, because when people are stressed out, and I have what is called white coat syndrome. When I'm in front of a doctor, I go, ah! So, you know, they're taking my blood pressure, I go, ah! So, and all of a sudden, blood pressure will drop 10 or 20 points, which is a pharmaceutical level.
Wow, yeah.
And in fact, I'm going to give you a quote from Bruce Lipton, who said, "I highly recommend the humming effect for all those impacted by the stress of the modern world. It is a powerful non-pharmaceutical prescription for self-healing that has only positive side effects such as harmony health, and happiness. Blessed be Bruce. But I think that's very, very, very true. So you can really amazingly quickly really put yourself, if you're stressed out, if you're going to be doing something that is like this, just do a few of these conscious hums that we're about to do. A couple of the other things that happen. Increased levels of melatonin. Melatonin, of course, is great for sleep. It is a wonderful tool, actually been used for treatment of depression. You get the reduction of stress-related hormones like cortisol, so that drops down. You get the release of endorphins, those wonderful self-created opiates that work as natural pain relievers. You get increased levels of nitric oxide, which is not only a vasodilator, which means that the oxygen flows really well. Your circulatory system, if you like, is loosened and allows the blood and the nutrients to flow better. And it's also, and here's the big one, drum roll, it's an antiviral agent and an antibacterial agent. So if you get any of those critters that sort of lodge first in the nose before they go out and get into the rest of your body, whether it's your respiratory system or whatnot, if you hum, such as we're going to do for 4 or 5 times, you'll get about 15 times the amount of nitric oxide that is normally generated, which is actually a pharmaceutical level of nitric oxide, which takes care of a lot of the critters that lodge in your sinus cavity. So that's very, very cool. You also get the release of oxytocin, which is the trust hormone. Hum together, it's a great way. If you all have ever any sort of shall we say, just disagreement, and you're like you need to resonate. And I know that never happens, but if it does, simply, and you have to do this beforehand. You have to agree that you're going to do that, because oftentimes when you get ticked off with each other, the last thing you want to do is either an ohm or a hum or something like that. But just say, hey, honey, let's ohm or let's hum, and you do that. And probably in a minute or two, all of a sudden you're resonating together, your nervous system, your heart rate, your respiration, and it's really a sacred sound. And all of a sudden you forget about what sort of issues you have. And lastly, you have increased heart rate variability, which means, of course, a lot of people know now about the vagus nerve. And this was one of the first things that, I read about in terms of the polyvagal theory by Stephen Porges. And he actually doesn't teach us that much, but there are 2 ways that you can really consciously affect the vagus nerve. One is through deep breathing, and the other is through humming. Now, I'm feeding a tremendous amount of real important information at you at a rapid speed, so I want you to be able to sort of assimilate this for a moment. So let's take a breath and so I'm going to lead you into what we call the protocols of conscious humming. And then we'll do it, and I trust that anybody who's watching this will also do this, because it's once again, it's a wonderful tool. I wish that there was a way that I could, use it as a financial aid to assist in all my other projects. But no, it's simply, it's something that people can do. It's free, and it's so powerful. Before we do that, I just want to tell you, there's something called the Yoga Sutras. I don't know if you ever heard of it. Yoga Sutras, ancient book by a guy named Patanjali. It's the basis of all yoga. It's 3,000 to 5,000 years old. Sutra 1.27. This is my translation of it. And it's, it's sort of like AI breaks everything into a sound bite. So this is it. The original sound of creation was pranava, the humming of prana. They had to give it a name, so they called it Om. So the Om came from the hum. So the Om is actually a deeply sacred, powerful tool, and the hum is equally sacred and powerful. And there's a phenomena called Shabd Yoga, which is yoga of traveling in the sound current. And there's a very deep and powerful exercise called Brahmari Pranayama, which is simply what we're going to be doing now, which is sort of conscious humming. All they do is they block their ears. It's the only addition. And in the humming effect, we have a chapter on Brahmari Pranayama. But let me go over the protocols with you. First thing you want to do is check yourself out to see where you're at, how you're feeling. Always got to do that. Next one, you want to do a couple of nice, deep and relaxed belly breaths, right? And these are just the protocols. We're not doing this yet, but get into that space, Leah, for sure. I can see you're going
Can't
in
stop
there.
me from breathing. I'm doing
Right,
it.
right. And keep your lips closed, Kyle. In other words, you need to have your lips closed.
Gotcha.
Then you hum on one note and make sure it's a comfortable pitch, okay? Really, a lot of people are looking for their sound in the field. Oftentimes you find that your sound is actually the conversational voice. It's actually it's a sound you've been making most of your life. So work at a comfortable tone, then you hum a minimum of 4 to 5 times. And then you're in silence for an equal amount of time. Check yourself out, do deep and relaxed breathing, keep your lips closed, hum in one note, comfortable note, do it 4 or 5 times, and then be in silence. Shall we try this all?
Yeah.
All right, so anybody who's watching this, try it at home, because this may give you a new experience. First, take a nice couple of deep breaths, slow belly breaths, breathing down to your belly. And while you're doing that, check yourself out. How are you feeling? I want you to notice any changes you may be feeling, that you may feel after you make the hum. And remember, with the hum, there are no good or bad hums. Any sound you make is going to be a good sound. And now take a nice deep breath, and we'll go forth with the first of 4 hums, okay? Taking another nice deep breath. Another nice deep breath. And one more. And now let's just sit in silence for a little while. Just checking yourself out more. And I can just tell you for myself that even with those 4 brief hums, I feel a whole lot more relaxed, a little bit high, a little blissed out. And I'm always amazed that, for me at least, doing the hum is that powerful. And this is, of course, just the beginning. You can hum for 5 minutes, and it might be an extraordinary phenomena for you. But if you do that, then I want you to be in silence for 5 minutes, because if you hum for 5 minutes and you try to stand up or have somewhere to go, you might pitch over because the effects are that powerful. Okay, kids, coming back.
That was great.
That was wonderful.
Felt a lot of softening around tension.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, I'm so happy that you talked about this, because I've done these practices and I've even measured what they did in my body via a heart coherence monitor.
Uh-huh.
It really helps when you said that whole list of benefits. It really
Yeah.
gets you motivated. I think whenever, I don't know why as human beings we stop doing things that work well, but
Right.
it's always a great reminder.
You know, and I've taught this at Heart Math, of course, and stuff like that, because doing the heart-brain coherence,
Yeah.
and as you're breathing in, doing this stuff, and then either making a hum or an ohm, that is it, because and then you focus your intention. That's the next step, is focusing your intention on what would you like to receive. What do you want to do for yourself? Do you have any sort of blockages in your body or your mind or your spirit that you want to take care of or whatnot? You know, I can do this with lots of different sounds, but the hum is so all-pervasive and so easy for people. It is almost a gateway sound. It introduces people to the whole plethora of sound, because once they begin to experience these vibrations in themselves, they realize the power of sound.
I'm curious, is there actually a difference between ohming and humming in regards to its impact on the body, or it's very subtle?
Pretty close, but I like the when I'm doing it with other people, then you get the over oh. But when I'm doing it by myself, and my wife and I, because we're close enough and whatnot. But if you're in a field of people, and you can do it, of course, you can just go from an So once again, nothing is static. Everything is fluid. And it's the fluidity of the sound that allows it to have such great impact upon you.
Can we talk about brainwave states? And specifically, I heard you talk about, I thought it was so interesting that each specific measurable state doesn't necessarily mean something spiritual is happening. In other words, you could be watching TV and you're an alpha. So can you talk about all that? I thought that was so interesting.
Well, once again, there are a number of different brainwave states, you know, if you like, and this is, the brain oscillates and vibrates at a state that is within the bandwidth of low frequencies, very low frequencies, and they're more and more being discovered, to the degree that there's some very high frequencies now called gamma, 65 or more cycles a second, but those are all based upon, first you have to be very slow. It's like you're on a diving board and your brain waves are going very slow into either delta or theta, very, very slow, 4, 8 seconds, cycles a second, and then you hit the diving board and you go up, and then you can be in higher levels of consciousness, but first you need to be slow. The gamma states that the monks are in and all that stuff, they got to get themselves really low before they can get really high. But the bottom line is, I think it's once again frequency plus intent. Your brain could be operating at 8 cycles a second, which is just at the threshold of alpha, and whatnot. And you could be getting that from watching TV, and you could be a couch potato because you're conscious, or you could be there talking to beings from other dimensions. So what is your consciousness like? What is your intention? Everything is consciousness. So we need to focus really on the intention that we have and the frequency that we're resonating at. That was a very compressed brainwave thing, I could do an hour on it. We don't have the time right now.
Yeah, I love that. What I'm hearing you say is you kind of were one of the first to really look at the clear intention plus elevated emotion equation. Is that
Yeah.
correct? Because,
Yeah.
that equation's had a significant impact on my life. I like that you focus on healing. I've heard others use it for manifestation.
Sure. Well, that actually came from me too. Yikes! But I don't get out because that was in Healing Sounds. Vocalization plus visualization equals manifestation. You make the sound, you visualize what you want, and you create it. And I think that is great. That is one of the ancient magic. I thought I was really original when I came up with that, and then I realized in almost every magical tradition, spiritual tradition, they utilize that as a phenomena. Even, believe it or not, the word abracadabra, which that is actually an ancient Aramaic word that means I will create as I make sound.
Oh,
But it got overused, and therefore it sort of lost its juice because it became sort of the butt of a joke.
Wow.
And so therefore I wouldn't necessarily use it, but it does have some origins there. But I mean, and my only, if you like, problem with manifestation, which is wonderful, but for many years now, I've wondered if most humans have the consciousness to manifest what is best for themselves on the planet as opposed to what, oh, I want a new Cadillac. Yeah, is that really going to be helping the planet at this time? And I've had these discussions with people, and I understand that we need to have a lot of our basic needs met, but I think we're living in a time and place where greed has overcome compassion, where the need for material goods has really overcome the need, so that you have so many people then make lots of money and be miserable, and towards the whatever point in their existence they realize that they're barren and they need that internal, if you like, nurturing and that connection to the divine. So that's why I just have myself had some questions with phenomena such as The Secret and all that stuff, which does work, but at what cost? Because if you're working with mojo to achieve just material success for yourself, that might not be the highest level of evolution that we can get to. And if we're going to be evolving to our higher level of being, we probably want to work with compassion, kindness, cooperation, those sort of things. You know what I mean?
Is there a rule there? Is there like a rule that you'd recommend? Like a rule, some sort of guideline that people should follow when it comes to setting intentions that abide by what you just talked about?
Kyle, that's brilliant. And wow, that's a brilliant question. I don't know that there is a protocol, except I know that what works for me is just in my sacred things is I ask for things to be for the betterment of all. In other words, not just for myself, but let what I do assist others and help others. So we think collectively, raising the consciousness of all beings as opposed to, whoa, I'm on top of everything. So what, What we could do is, have the party all around us,
yeah. On this journey, what have been one or two of the most surprising things that you have discovered? And it could be about sound, it could be about anything, because I know you have your hand in many pies.
It's all about love. Everything is consciousness, and it's all about love. And that really sounds obviously so. Boy, when I was younger, I had a very, very dear teacher who's on the angelic realms. And at the time when I was back in the 1980s, I was founding the Sound Healers Association. I was looking for a logo. And her husband was a brilliant artist, great megas, brilliant. And he put a heart with a harp in it. Great, which is a great image. And then she had the saying was the true sound of healing. The true sound of healing is love. I said, oh God, that is so, swarmy. I can't do that. And now my wife and I share it so often. The true sound of healing is love. People looking for the specific frequencies for doing whatnot, if you can project love into someone, it is such a great phenomena. And the more, if you like, higher levels of consciousness I get, I realize that everything is ultimately consciousness, and the ultimate consciousness, of course, is understanding that everything is love, which sounds so cliched, but it's so true.
I'm curious if, any of these ancient civilizations, do you think they knew stuff about sound that we didn't?
I surely do. Here is a quote from the New York Times Science section, February 8th, 1988. I only remember the date because it has so many eights in it. Sound shaped into dazzling tool can make, break, or rearrange molecular structure and levitate objects. Okay, got no more, talk about, the moving the pyramids or large blocks of stone. Yeah, this is something that has been known before, and there are stories of the Tibetans being able to levitate. It's called acoustic levitation, actually. That's one of the things is using that. I think you can also learn very easily how to use sound, different sounds, different intervals, with intentionality as portals or dimensional consciousness shifts. Very, very powerful. Shamans and magicians have known this for a long time. Once again, vocalization plus visualization equals manifestation. Just one has to be cautious of power because it needs to be used judiciously, properly, kindly, for the betterment of all.
I love that. If somebody right now is struggling, there's so many people who are having health problems and mental problems, which can be physical too. How would you recommend somebody proceed? There's obviously, I think you would agree, there's probably a long time of the emotions affecting the body. But how can somebody figure out how to use sound on their healing journey and do a test to see which sounds work for them?
I would just say start with the hum, because I've never found anybody. Listen, one of the reasons why my wife and I came up with working with the sound of the hum is that I would teach very advanced harmonically related sounds to resonate the chakras and do X, Y, or Z, and then we'd come back a year later. How many of you are doing this? And 100 people, one person would raise their hand. I said, no, we need to find something that they can do as a daily practice. And one of the reasons most people have difficulty, particularly working with the voice, is that they're so judgmental. But, the hum is the one sound you can't be judgmental about. I can't hum good. Everybody can hum. You hum when you're happy. You can't hum when you're angry. Incidentally, I tried that. A friend of mine is a pretty well-known spiritual figure once said, Jonathan, you can't hum when you're angry. And I said, you're right, because I try to, doesn't work, yeah. So I would suggest if somebody's, just try to do that, and then we'll open up. And once again, remember the 4 pillars. Everything is vibration. Intent is powerful. We are all unique vibratory beings. There's so much stuff. And silence is golden, but there's so much stuff these days about, certain frequencies. And a lot of these frequencies I have brought down on the planet, and then people said, oh, this is good for that, and this is good. Well, if frequency plus intent, if you have a belief in something, so I'm not going to say that's not true, that doesn't work. If it works for you, great. I just am such a huge believer in, if you like, the hum. But I will tell you that I think one of the great things, if people want to go to our website, healingsounds.com, for example, we call these the sacred ratio. And just listen, these balance your brain, your body, your energy field, and I'll hit them together and just. You know, just lovely, working with this and using these as also an example. They're great, great tools. And a lot of people, I have crystal bowls and all that stuff, but these you can stick in your back pocket and walk there. And if somebody's stressed out, you just sort of hit them together. And it's like, oh man, nice. Uh, Crystal bowls have a tendency of breaking when you drop them. These can be dropped from an airplane, will still maintain, they'll bounce. But it's the ratio of 2 to 3, which is a powerful harmonic ratio. So I just brought those up as another great thing, as people can work with tuning forks. Also, once again, I love crystal bowls, and even Tibetan bowls are wondrous tools. So you have to go within, but try the hum first. Once again, cost efficient. Everybody can do it. No electricity needed. And if you just work with the, protocols that I suggested, you felt something. Just imagine if when we, get off the air and you both sit there and you hum for like 5 minutes. You may find some really powerful experiences.
Can I just ask, you talked about a 2 to 3 ratio. I'm just wondering what frequencies those tuning forks were, and then
Okay, so this
explain
is
more about that.
yeah, but okay, this is C256 and this is G384, but it doesn't matter. I happen to have these, but it is the relationship, the 2 to 3 ratio, it's the ratio and not the frequencies.
Okay.
People have become really focused on frequencies, but it's the relationship. If I hit this by itself, it's nice, but if I hit them together, you get the field being created from these. And it is the relationship of the two. These could be in any key, as long as the relationship is 2 to 3. As an example, there are harmonic ratios that are very, so this affects once again, it's brilliant for balancing your energy field, your etheric field, your brain waves, etc. If you were to listen, your left and right hemispheres would basically sync, together, and then that would also. So just a quick little thing. A little knowledge is a dangerous thing, and I don't want to give too much, but I would say that the 2 to 3 ratio for tuning forks is brilliant. And then I love the 8 to 13 is another ratio that we have, which I don't have with me right now. But when people are beginning, 2 to 3 is really good. 8 to 3 is a little higher, and people go, "Oh, I want to be high." Now, first you got to get to that first level, then get to the next one, get to the next one. It's a step-by-step process of vibratory activation using sacred sound.
This has been such an amazing interview. For anyone listening, how can they start to get in touch with your work? Where should they go?
HealingSounds, one word, .com. And they can find me, of course, on YouTube, Jonathan Goldman Official. I've got a few hundred different videos on there. My wife and I do a monthly sound satsang, a teaching, and I've got all sorts of different courses and all that stuff. So that's there, and a lot of different, over a half a dozen different award-winning books and over 30 different award-winning albums. So
I actually did your chakra tuning there on your YouTube channel, the one that has
oh,
like
nice.
6.5 million views. and it sent me into orbit. I felt so good after that. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. We'll put all that information down below. And I feel like we
Great.
just scratched the surface, so I hope you come back with us.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's, I used to teach for over 20 years a healing sounds intensive that was 10 days long. And we would go from around 9 in the morning till 9 at night with times for assimilation and food. And it was a brilliant experience, but there's a whole lot about sound. And we would just then scratch the surface, because this is a many lifetime effort. Because if everything is sound, then we simply are floating through the universe as vibratory beings that let us try to project as much compassion and kindness and love and light through sound as we can.
I love that.
Thank you so much.
We're sending so much love to everybody. Thank you, Jonathan.
Bye, everybody. Bye, Jonathan.